Pay first, then do it. The Chinese girl said. The rancher paid, then did something horrifying. The sun was slowly disappearing behind the hills, casting a warm golden light across the fields surrounding the small village. The air smelled of fresh hay and damp earth, and a soft wind rustled the leaves of the trees. It was a quiet evening, the kind that made the world feel calm and peaceful. Breath. Yet for one man, the peace of the village was about to change forever. The man was a rancher. He was not young, but he was strong and used to hard work. His hands were rough and calloused from years of handling animals and tools. People in the village respected him because he was honest, hard-working, and always willing to help others. Yet, despite his strength and skill, there was a loneliness that clung to him like a shadow. Most days, he spent long hours alone in the fields, taking care of his animals and land. He had grown used to the solitude, but sometimes it made him restless, longing for something different, something exciting to break the monotony of his life. On this particular evening, the rancher decided to visit the village market. It was small and quiet, with only a few stalls and vendors left, packing up their goods as the sun dipped lower. The air was filled with the smells of fresh bread, vegetables, and herbs. Villagers greeted each other warmly as they passed, exchanging small talk about the weather or the crops. The rancher enjoyed these little moments, even though he rarely stayed long. As he walked through the market, his eyes caught sight of someone unusual. She was a young woman, sitting behind a small table with a few items displayed. She did not seem like the other vendors. Her hair was black and shiny, neatly tied back, and her clothes were clean but simple. There was a quiet confidence in the way she sat, a calmness that seemed to command attention without effort. She was not from the village, and the rancher knew it immediately. People rarely saw newcomers here, and they certainly did not carry themselves with such confidence. Curiosity drew him closer. The young woman looked up at him and smiled faintly. There was something strange in her eyes, a sharpness, a hint of mystery. She spoke in a clear voice, and although her accent was different, he understood her perfectly.
"Good evening," she said. "I have something special for you." The rancher raised an eyebrow.
"Special? For me?" he asked, a little cautious.
"Yes," she replied, her smile widening slightly. "But first you must pay."
"Only then will I show you." The words were simple, but there was something in the tone that made the rancher pause, pace. He had done business before, but this was unusual. "Pay first, then see what you get." Best. Most people would be suspicious, and usually rightfully so. Yet he felt a strange pull, a curiosity he could not explain. "What is it?"
he asked cautiously. The girl leaned slightly forward.
"Something that will change your life," she said. Her eyes sparkled with a hint of mischief, or maybe it was a secret she was keeping. "But you must trust me. Pay first, and then you will see." The rancher hesitated. He was a practical man. He knew the risks of giving money before receiving anything in return.
"The villagers often warned each other about strangers with strange offers."
Yet something about this girl made him want to believe her. Perhaps it was her confidence or the way she seemed to know what he wanted even before he spoke. "How much?" he asked, still wary. The girl named a sum. It was not an enormous amount, but for him, it was enough to make him think twice. He looked around. No one else was near them. The market was almost empty now, the vendors packing up their goods for the day. The silence made her words feel even more serious, more important. After a long moment of thinking, the rancher nodded. "Fine," he said. "We'll pay. But I expect you to keep your promise." She smiled, a calm, knowing smile, and accepted the money. Breath. She counted it carefully, then handed it back, along with a small note. "Read this carefully," she said. "But follow it exactly, and you will understand everything." The rancher took the note and looked at it. The writing was neat, almost too perfect. Bet. They gave him instructions for something on his ranch, something that seemed simple at first. But there was a strange way the words were written, almost like a puzzle. He did not understand it fully, but he felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about the note that made him uneasy, something he could not explain. Despite his unease, the rancher left the market and made his way home. The sun had almost disappeared completely, leaving the sky painted with shades of orange and purple. The fields around his ranch were quiet, except for the occasional call of a bird or the soft rustle of the wind. Everything seemed normal, yet the rancher could not shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Something unusual, something important. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The girl's words echoed in his mind. "Pay first, then do it." He tried to imagine what it could mean. But what did she want him to do? Why did she insist on payment first? But most of all, he wondered if he had made a mistake. What if this was a trap? What if she was dangerous? But along with the fear was excitement. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of curiosity, a feeling that maybe life was about to become interesting.
He had spent so many days doing the same things, caring for animals, tending fields, and living alone.
Maybe this was the change he had been waiting for. Maybe this girl could offer him something extraordinary, something beyond the ordinary life of a rancher. The next morning, the rancher woke early. The sun was just rising, casting a soft light over the fields. He got dressed quickly, thinking about the note and what it asked him to do. He packed some tools, as the instructions were vague but suggested he would need them. The animals in the barn looked at him curiously as he passed, sensing the unusual energy in his steps. He followed the note carefully, trying to do everything exactly as it said. He moved quietly around the ranch, checking the fences, observing the animals, and preparing certain areas of land. Everything seemed normal at first, but then he noticed little things that felt strange. The animals seemed restless, looking at him with unusual attention. Some of the tools were not where he remembered leaving them. The wind carried sounds that made him tense, almost as if something or someone was watching him. As the day passed, his unease grew. Yet he continued. The girl's instructions were clear in one sense. He had to follow them exactly. But there was also a mystery in the way they were written, a sense of danger hidden beneath the simple words. The rancher felt like he was walking a fine line, unsure if he was doing the right thing or falling into a trap. Break. When evening came again, the rancher paused to look around. The fields were bathed in golden light once more, just like the day before. Everything looked peaceful, but he knew it was not. There was something changing on his ranch, something that was not there before. He could not see it yet, but he could feel it, a tension in the air, a presence that made his heart beat faster. He sat down for a moment, trying to calm himself. He thought about the girl, her words, her mysterious smile. Who was she really? Why had she come to his village? Most of all, what would happen next? He did not know, but he felt a strange certainty that his life was about to change forever. That night he went to bed, but sleep did not come easily. His mind was full of questions, doubts, and fears. He thought about the payment he had given, the trust he had placed in a stranger, and the strange task he had been asked to perform. Somewhere deep inside, he felt a mix of fear and anticipation. Something was coming, something big, something that would alter the life of the quiet rancher in ways he could never imagine. Outside, the wind blew softly, rustling the trees and carrying the distant sounds of the village settling for the night. The stars began to appear, tiny points of light in the dark sky. And somewhere far from the rancher's home, the young Chinese girl smiled quietly to herself, knowing that her mysterious plan was beginning to unfold. The rancher did not know it yet, but the simple words, "Pay first, then do it," would soon lead him into a world of surprises, fear, and choices that would test him in ways he had never faced before. He had stepped into a story much bigger than himself, a story where trust, curiosity, and courage would collide, shaping his life forever. As he drifted into a restless sleep, the golden light of the sunset still lingered in his mind, a reminder that the ordinary world could change in an instant, and that sometimes the most unexpected encounters could lead to the most extraordinary events.
The next morning, the rancher woke up before sunrise. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange, and a thin mist lay over the fields.
He rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air in his lungs. Today, he would begin the task the young girl had instructed him to do. His heart pounded with a mix of excitement and fear. The note she had given him seemed simple, yet its words carried a strange weight, as if each instruction was more important than it appeared. He stepped outside into the crisp morning. The ranch smelled familiar. Fresh hay, wet earth, and the faint scent of animals. But somehow, it felt different. He could not explain why. The quiet was heavier than usual, and the animals seemed to sense something unusual. The horses in the stable stirred restlessly, flicking their tails and stamping their hooves. The cows looked at him with steady, curious eyes, and even the chickens clucked in a nervous rhythm. He carried the note in his hand and read it again. The first instructions were simple enough. Check the fences, inspect the barn, and prepare certain areas of the land.
He did exactly as she said, moving carefully from one place to another.
He repaired a broken fence near the back field, making sure every post was firm and every wire tight. He cleaned the barn, arranging the tools neatly and ensuring the animals had fresh water and feed. Each action seemed ordinary, yet he could not shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him. As the morning passed, small oddities began to appear. A tool he had set down carefully the day before was not where he remembered leaving it. A chicken that had been asleep in its coop wandered into the wrong area. Breaths. Even the wind seemed strange, carrying sounds that did not belong. The rustle of leaves in patterns he could not explain. Distant footsteps that stopped when he turned around. He felt a shiver run down his spine, but he reminded himself to stay calm. He had promised the girl that he would follow her instructions exactly, and he would not break that promise, no matter how uneasy he felt. By late morning, he moved to the field where she had told him to pay the most attention. The note had been very specific here. Measure the land, mark certain areas, and prepare a small enclosure. The words seemed harmless, but something about the phrasing made him pause. They were precise in detail, but vague in purpose. He wondered what the girl wanted him to do in this particular spot, but he knew better than to question her instructions. As he worked, he noticed that the animals in this area behaved differently. The horses moved nervously, snorting and stamping. The cows clustered together, their eyes wide, and even the chickens hesitated, moving slowly as if sensing tension in the air. He shook his head. Animals could be unpredictable, but this felt more than that. It felt deliberate, as if the ranch itself was alive and aware of what he was doing. By noon, the sun was high, and the heat began to press down on the land. The rancher wiped sweat from his brow and took a moment to drink water. He looked around at the fields, The barn and the animals, everything seemed normal on the surface. Yet he could not ignore the feeling that something was hidden beneath the ordinary. He felt as if the girl had set a plan in motion, a plan he was now walking through without knowing the end. After a brief rest, he returned to his work. The next instructions in the note were stranger. The girl had asked him to move certain animals from one part of the field to another. She had specified the order and timing carefully, emphasizing that he must do it exactly as she had written. At first, this seemed simple, but as he began, he realized it was more complicated than it appeared. The animals resisted, some refusing to move, others running off unexpectedly. He had to use all his strength, patience, and experience to guide them correctly. As he worked, shadows began to lengthen across the field. The sun lowered in the sky and the mist returned, curling around the barn and trees. The rancher felt a strange unease. He had spent years working these fields, and he had never felt anything like this. The ordinary world of the ranch seemed to shift, as if the land itself had changed overnight. Despair. He could feel eyes on him, though there was no one there. He paused, looking around carefully, but the fields were empty, silent except for the soft sounds of the animals. Despite the fear creeping into his mind, he pressed on. The girl's words rang in his head. "Do exactly as I say. No questions." He reminded himself that he had agreed to this, that he had paid for it, and that he had to see it through. His hands ached from the work, and the sun burned his skin, but he moved carefully, methodically, making sure each instruction was followed perfectly. By late afternoon, something unexpected happened. As he moved a group of horses to the specified area, one of them stumbled and fell. The rancher rushed to help, but as he bent down, he noticed something strange. The horse's eyes seemed to reflect a fear he had never seen before, a look that went beyond instinct. It was almost as if the animal knew more than he did. He stood back, uneasy, and tried to shake off the feeling. It had to be his imagination. Animals could react strangely, especially in new situations. Yet, the feeling did not go away. The more he followed the girl's instructions, the more the ranch seemed alive with tension. Even the trees, the wind, and the distant hills seemed to watch him. Bears. He began to notice patterns in the sounds, the clattering of tools, the rustle of leaves, the low calls of the animals. At times it seemed as though the air itself was waiting for him to make a mistake. He worked carefully, but a part of him wondered what would happen if he did. By evening, he had completed most of the day's instructions. His back ached, his hands were blistered, and his clothes were damp with sweat. He paused to look at the enclosure he had built and the animals he had moved. Everything was in order according to the note, yet there was a sense of unease that he could not shake. But something was changing on his ranch. Something beyond his understanding. The sky turned shades of deep orange and purple, and the mist grew thicker. The rancher cleaned the tools he had used and led the animals back to their shelters. Even as he did this, he felt watched. He kept glancing over his shoulder, expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, but the fields remained empty. The only sound was the wind and the soft movements of the animals settling down for the night. As night fell, the rancher lit a small lantern and sat outside, thinking about the day. He felt a mixture of exhaustion, fear, and curiosity.
The girl's instructions had been followed perfectly, yet he had no idea why.
What was the purpose of all this careful work? Why had she insisted on payment first?
Baz. He could not answer these questions, and the uncertainty made him uneasy. Yet, despite the fear, he felt a strange satisfaction. He had completed the task, followed the instructions exactly, and proven to himself that he could handle whatever challenge the girl had set. The thrill of curiosity mingled with the tension of fear. He wondered what tomorrow would bring. Would the next day's instructions be easier, or would they push him even further into the unknown? As he sat under the stars, he thought about the girl. Who was she really? Why had she come to this quiet village? And why had she singled him out? There was something in her eyes, something in her smile, that made him feel both drawn to her and wary of her. He could not forget the words she had spoken, the mysterious confidence with which she had demanded payment first. Pay first, then do it. Sleep came slowly that night. The rancher lay in bed, thinking about every detail of the day. He replayed each moment, each animal's movement, each shadow he had noticed. His mind raced with questions and possibilities. Psst. Somewhere deep inside, he felt that the story he had stepped into was only beginning. There were more tasks, more instructions, more mysteries waiting for him. And he knew that whatever happened next, it would change his life forever. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, and the mist curled around the fields. The ranch was quiet, but it held a sense of tension, a feeling that the ordinary world had shifted into something strange and unpredictable. The rancher was unaware of what was coming, but he would soon discover that the simple act of following instructions could lead to unexpected, even terrifying consequences.
He fell asleep finally, exhausted but alert, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges.
The young Chinese girl had set a path for him, and he had chosen to follow it. Each instruction was a step deeper into the unknown, a step that would test his courage, his patience, and his ability to think clearly under pressure. The rancher did not yet understand the full scope of what he had agreed to, but he felt a quiet, growing certainty that his life would never be the same again. And somewhere far away, the girl smiled quietly, knowing that her mysterious plan was unfolding exactly as she had intended. The next morning, the rancher woke before sunrise again. The sky was a soft pale blue, and the air carried a chill that made him pull his jacket tighter. Even though he had spent many mornings tending to his land, today felt different. The silence of the field seemed heavier, almost watching him. He thought about the young Chinese girl and her mysterious instructions. Each day the tasks had grown stranger, yet he had followed them without question. The payment he had made seemed a small price for the promise of something extraordinary. He carried the note with him and read it carefully. The instructions were clear, but the language had shifted slightly, becoming more urgent and direct. Today, she had asked him to inspect the northern fields and prepare them in a specific way, marking certain areas and moving the animals at precise times.
The note emphasized that he must be exact and careful.
Any mistake, it hinted, could have consequences. As he walked toward the northern fields, he noticed subtle changes that unsettled him. The mist clung more thickly to the grass, curling around the fence posts and trees like smoke.
The animals were unusually quiet, some standing still as if frozen.
Even the wind seemed to carry a warning, rustling the leaves in strange patterns.
The rancher shook his head, trying to dismiss the feeling, but it persisted.
Something about the day felt heavier, charged with tension. He reached the first area marked on the note. The grass was taller here, and the ground slightly uneven. He carefully measured and marked the spots as instructed. Each action seemed normal enough, but he could not ignore the strange behavior of the animals. The horses in the field eyed him suspiciously, shifting their weight nervously. The cows had gathered close together, almost huddling, and even the chickens clucked softly as though sensing his tension. The rancher moved from one marked spot to another, following the instructions exactly. But as he worked, the sense of unease grew stronger. Shadows fell differently across the fields, and he felt a strange pressure in the air. It was as though the land itself had changed overnight. Every sound, Even the softest rustle of leaves seemed amplified, and he could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. By mid-morning, he reached the area where the girl's instructions became more specific. She had asked him to move certain animals into a small enclosure, ensuring they were in a particular order. At first, this seemed straightforward, but the rancher quickly realized it would be challenging. The animals resisted, the horses balked, the cows stamped their hooves, and the chickens scattered. He had to use all his skill and patience to guide them correctly. Every step required careful attention, or they would break the order the girl had instructed. As he worked, he noticed strange markings in the soil. They looked deliberate, almost like someone had been there before him. The shapes were subtle, barely visible, but they gave him a shiver. He paused and knelt to examine them. Could it be part of the girl's instructions, or had someone else been on the ranch? He did not know, but the feeling of unease deepened. By noon, the sun had climbed high, casting harsh shadows across the field. The rancher wiped sweat from his brow and paused for a drink of water. The animals were settled for the moment, but the tension in the air remained. He looked around at the fields, the fences, and the distant hills. Everything appeared normal, yet he could not ignore the feeling that something was coming, something beyond his understanding. The next instructions in the note were even stranger. The girl had asked him to isolate one particular horse and follow it to a specific area of the field. At first, he hesitated. The horse was nervous, and the request seemed unusual. But he reminded himself that he had promised to follow the instructions exactly. Taking a deep breath, he approached the horse carefully. It backed away at first, but he spoke softly, using the techniques he had learned over years of ranch work. Slowly, the horse began to follow him. The designated area was near the far edge of the field, close to the trees where the shadows were longest. The rancher guided the horse into position, marking it as instructed. Panned. He noticed something strange. The ground here was softer, almost like mud, and the shadows seemed darker. He felt a shiver run down his spine. The note had not warned him about anything unusual here, yet he could sense that this spot was different, important, and somehow dangerous. He completed the next step carefully, following every word of the note. Then the unexpected happened. As he prepared to move the horse back, it suddenly reared up, snorting and kicking. He stumbled back, barely avoiding being hit. The horse's eyes were wide with fear, and the rancher noticed that the other animals were watching intently, frozen in place. Something about the horse's behavior felt unnatural. It was not just fear. It was panic, a terror that seemed to spread across the field. The rancher tried to calm the horse, speaking softly and moving slowly. He remembered the girl's warning, "Do exactly as I say." He followed the next instructions carefully, but the horse refused to cooperate fully. Every movement felt like walking on a knife's edge. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. He realized with growing horror that the day's task was not just difficult. It was dangerous, more dangerous than he had imagined. By late afternoon, the sun began to sink, and the shadows grew longer. The rancher's hands were sore, his back ached, and sweat dripped down his face. Yet he could not stop. The girl's instructions demanded completion, and he felt trapped by his own promise. Each step forward brought new challenges. The animals resisted, the ground was uneven, and the sense of being watched never left him. Every sound made him jump. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, even the soft stamping of hooves. Then it happened. He reached the final instruction for the day. The note told him to open a small gate near the edge of the trees and guide the isolated horse inside a prepared enclosure. The rancher obeyed, heart pounding. But the moment the horse entered, a strange and horrifying thing occurred. The horse froze in place, trembling violently, and the ground beneath it seemed to shift. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, and the rancher realized he could not move. Bah! Fear gripped him tightly, yet he remembered the girl's words. Do exactly as I say. Slowly, carefully, he moved closer to the horse. The animal's eyes reflected a fear he had never seen in any creature before. It was as if it understood something terrifying, something the rancher could not yet see. Then, as he reached out to guide it, a loud crack echoed through the trees. He stumbled back in shock, his heart racing. Something had happened to the enclosure, something he did not understand. Looking closer, he saw that the ground around the horse had shifted, creating a dangerous pit. The horse was trapped, terrified, and the rancher realized with horror that he had followed the instructions exactly, yet the result was disastrous. The note had not warned him of this outcome, yet the girl had anticipated it. She had set a situation that tested his obedience and courage to the extreme. Panic rose in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He could not let fear take over. Carefully, he tried to help the horse, moving slowly and speaking softly. Every step was deliberate. The animal's trembling increased, and the rancher's hands were slick with sweat. But he persisted. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. If he made one wrong move, the consequences could be severe. As he worked, he noticed the other animals watching intently. Even the birds in the trees were silent, their eyes following every motion. The rancher felt as if the entire ranch had become a living, breathing presence, aware of his actions and waiting for the outcome. He moved cautiously, heart pounding, focusing on saving the horse while following the girl's instructions exactly. Finally, after what felt like hours, he managed to steady the horse and guide it safely out of the pit. It was shaken but unharmed. The rancher's hands trembled, and his clothes were soaked with sweat. He sank to the ground, exhausted and shaken to his core. The events of the day had pushed him to the edge of fear and uncertainty. He realized that the girl's instructions were more than a simple task. They were a test, a challenge that forced him to confront danger, uncertainty, and his own courage. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the fields, the rancher stood and looked at the horse. He felt a mixture of relief, fear, and awe. The note had led him through a day of tension and terror, and he understood that the girl's plan was far from over. Tomorrow, the instructions would continue, and he would face new challenges, perhaps even more dangerous than today. That night, as he lay in bed, he could not sleep. His mind replayed the events of the day in vivid detail. The trembling horse, the shifting ground, the heavy air, and the sense of being watched. Breath. He thought about the girl, her calm smile, and her mysterious instructions. She had known exactly how to push him, to test him, to frighten him, and yet he had obeyed every word. The experience left him both terrified and strangely exhilarated. Somewhere far away, the young Chinese girl smiled quietly, knowing that her plan was unfolding perfectly. She had set a path, and the rancher had followed it without hesitation. The events of the day had revealed his courage, his obedience, and his vulnerability. And tomorrow, the story would continue, leading him even further into the unknown, into a world where fear, trust, and curiosity collided in ways he had never imagined. The next morning, the rancher woke before the sun had fully risen. His body ached from the events of the previous day, his muscles stiff and sore. His hands were blistered, and his mind was heavy with worry. The memory of the horse, trapped in the pit, trembling with fear, still haunted him. Yet, despite the exhaustion, he knew he had to continue. The girl's instructions were still waiting, and he had promised to follow them exactly. The thought of stopping, of disobeying her, made his stomach churn with unease. The air was cool and fresh, and a thin layer of fog covered the fields. Patient, everything looked peaceful, yet the rancher felt a tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. He dressed quickly, took the note from his pocket, and read it again. The instructions for today were different from the previous days. They were more deliberate, more precise, and somehow more personal. She asked him to inspect the entire ranch carefully, noting anything unusual. Then he was to perform a task that required both courage and careful attention. He set out, moving slowly through the fields. The animals watched him with quiet intensity. Even the chickens clucked softly, as if sensing the growing tension. He felt a strange connection between the land, the animals, and the instructions he had been given. The ranch seemed alive in a way he had never experienced before, aware of his every movement, waiting for him to make the next decision. By mid-morning, he reached the northern field again, the place where the horse had been trapped, paused for a moment, remembering the terror of yesterday. The pit had been filled in, the ground leveled, but the memory of the fear lingered. He took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. The girl's note emphasized precision and focus.
Any distraction could lead to mistakes, and he knew from experience that mistakes here could be dangerous. He began inspecting the fields carefully, checking fences, animals, and equipment.
Everything seemed in order, yet he noticed subtle changes. Some of the tools had shifted slightly, the animals moved differently, and the wind carried unfamiliar sounds. His heart raced, but he followed the instructions meticulously, knowing that careful obedience was the only way forward. As noon approached, the rancher reached the part of the note that instructed him to isolate certain animals again. This time it was not just one horse, but a small group of cows and horses. The girl had given specific instructions about the order in which they were to be moved, the paths they were to follow, and the times they were to be in certain areas. The task seemed simple on paper, but in practice it was delicate and demanding. The animals were nervous, responding to his movements with hesitation and fear. He moved slowly, speaking in calm tones, guiding each one carefully. Every step required his full attention. If he made even the smallest mistake, the animals could panic, creating chaos. He felt sweat bead on his forehead and his hands tremble. But he persisted, remembering the girl's words. "Do exactly as I say." Suddenly, one of the horses bolted unexpectedly, scattering the group. The rancher's heart leapt, but he did not panic. Bass. Years of experience had taught him to stay calm in emergencies. He carefully guided the animals back, using patience and gentle commands. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, and the silence of the field seemed to press in on him from all sides. Yet he moved steadily, determined to complete the task. By late afternoon, the animals were in position. The rancher took a moment to breathe, feeling both relief and lingering fear. He realized that the girl's instructions were not merely about moving animals or preparing fields. They were testing him, his courage, his patience, his ability to remain calm under pressure. He had faced fear, confusion, and danger. Yet, he had followed her guidance exactly. The realization filled him with a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. Then he reached the final instruction for the day. The girl had asked him to go to the edge of the forest, where the trees grew thick and shadows lingered even in daylight. There, he was to examine a small, hidden area she had marked with subtle signs. The rancher's heart raced as he approached. The previous day's pit incident had shown him that even simple instructions could have unexpected consequences. He moved carefully, stepping lightly on the soft earth, his eyes scanning every detail. As he reached the marked area, he noticed something unusual. The ground had faint markings, almost like a pattern, but different from anything he had seen before. He knelt to examine it closely, feeling a strange chill run through him. It was as if the land itself was holding a secret, and he was about to uncover it.
He followed the note carefully, placing stakes and marking areas as instructed.
Every movement required precision. One wrong step could undo all his careful work. Suddenly he heard a faint noise, a rustle in the leaves, a whisper in the wind. He froze, his heart pounding. The animals nearby shifted nervously, sensing the tension in the air. The rancher knew he had to stay calm. He took a deep breath and focused on the task at hand. Slowly, deliberately, he completed the markings and adjustments the note demanded. Each movement felt heavier than the last, as if the forest itself were aware of his actions. By evening, he had finished. The sun was low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the fields. The rancher stepped back to observe the area, but everything appeared calm, almost peaceful. Yet he could not shake the feeling that something had changed. The air felt charged, full of anticipation. He realized that the girl's instructions had led him to this point for a reason. He had been tested, pushed to the edge of fear and patience, and now he was ready for the next step, whatever it might be. He returned to the barn, exhausted but alert. The animals were calm, the tools in place, the fences secure. Yet the rancher could not forget the sense of tension in the fields. The experience of the past days had changed him. He was more aware, more cautious, but also more confident in his ability to face challenges. He knew that the girl's instructions had been designed to test him, and he had passed.
That night, as he lay in bed, he reflected on everything that had happened.
The young Chinese girl had appeared suddenly, offering a mysterious promise. He had paid for her instructions, and each day had brought new challenges, strange events, and moments of fear. He had followed her guidance exactly, even when the results were unexpected or dangerous. And now, he understood that the experience had been more than a simple task. It had been a journey, a test of courage, patience, and trust. The rancher realized that he had grown through the experience. He had faced fear and uncertainty, yet he had remained calm and focused. He had learned to observe carefully, to think before acting, and to trust in his own abilities while following guidance. The girl's instructions had pushed him to his limits, revealing his strengths and weaknesses, and preparing him for whatever challenges might come next.
As the stars appeared in the sky, the rancher felt a quiet sense of completion.
The tasks had been finished, the animals were safe, and the land was orderly. Yet he knew that the experience would stay with him forever. The lessons he had learned, the courage he had discovered within himself, and the strange, mysterious influence of the girl would remain in his mind. Somewhere far away, the young Chinese girl smiled quietly to herself. She had set a plan in motion, tested the rancher, and guided him through challenges he had never imagined. The story had reached its conclusion, at least for now, but the impact would last a lifetime. She had chosen wisely, and the rancher had responded with courage, patience, and careful attention to her instructions. The next morning, the rancher woke feeling different. The air was crisp, the sky bright with sunlight. He walked through the fields, observing the animals, the fences, and the land he had tended for years. Everything seemed the same, yet he felt a change within himself. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and challenges beyond what he thought possible, and he had succeeded. The experience had taught him the value of careful attention, courage, and trust. The villagers noticed the change in him as well. They commented on the calm determination in his movements, the careful way he tended the animals, and the quiet confidence he carried. Some whispered about the mysterious girl and the tasks she had given him. Others wondered how the rancher had grown so much in such a short time. But the rancher himself knew the truth. It was the experience, the instructions, and the strange, mysterious guidance of the girl that had shaped him. Bears.
Life on the ranch returned to a quiet rhythm. The animals were cared for, the fences repaired, and the fields orderly.
Yet the memory of the girl and her instructions remained. The rancher often thought about her, wondering who she really was, why she had come, and what had guided her choices. He would never forget the lessons he had learned, the challenges he had faced, and the courage he had discovered within himself. In time, the story became part of the village's whispers. People spoke of the rancher who had faced a mysterious challenge, followed strange instructions, and emerged stronger and wiser. The young Chinese girl became a legend, a figure of mystery and intrigue. And the rancher himself carried the memory of her guidance, a reminder that sometimes unexpected challenges could lead to growth, courage, and understanding beyond what one ever imagined. The rancher continued his work, tending to the animals and land, but with a new sense of awareness. He moved carefully, thought deeply, and acted with both caution and confidence. Patience. He had learned that trust, courage, and patience were not just words. They were qualities that could guide him through the most difficult and mysterious situations. And though the girl had disappeared as suddenly as she had arrived, her presence remained in the rancher's mind, a quiet reminder that life often brought challenges in unexpected forms, and that facing them with courage, attention, and care could change a person forever.